Really pleased to be here. Fantastic news to see so many people that have been booked onto the course. Well, thank you all very much for doing that. So I'll be your host for this evening. So the introductions, I've already done myself. So British Judo staff member and event lead host. And I'm supported this evening by two high quality referees. Lisa Rivers, international referee and the technical support for this evening, and Martin Rivers, international referee and technical support. Lisa and Martin are quite unique, really, because it's the only couple that have ever reached international level through the competitive route. Both managed to get to international referee level through examination. That was really good. So we move forward. Okay. The program to date. So this evening is obviously the 9th of December, and scoring is the main topic for this evening. In fact, the only topic, and we've got two more modules lined up for January and February, which will be forthcoming. Topics covered in this module. Well, why are we actually here? Why have we actually bothered to come? That's obviously a really important part. I'm having some difficulty with the screen, actually. The scoring refresher guide. So what is the actual criteria for the scores? We'll then move on to some situations where it's either Ippon or Wazari, what Wazari or no score, and so forth. So various different topics that we'll look at for you to make your own decisions, and we'll give you the video to look at. You make your decision, write it down, and then we'll come back to it later. The module takes approximately 60 minutes. So it depends on the questions, but we'll see how it goes. So this module is designed to help you refresh scoring criteria. And the scoring criteria we're going to be looking at is international level stuff. It's international level video, so it's right leading edge stuff. But it can obviously be applied at all levels, but you'll see the type of examples we've got more at the top end of judo. Don't worry if you miss some of it. The content will be available later for review. We do a recording of all these modules so as you can review them at your own leisure. The situations, don't worry about the situations. They're not contrived. They're not deliberately awkward. They're real situations that we've seen in international competition over the last couple of years. If you have any questions, please log them in the chat room, and the support people, Lisa and Martin, will answer those questions throughout the module. If there's anything that's a little bit complicated or we need to have some verbal exchange, we'll do that right at the end of the presentation, rather than keep interrupting the presentation as we go along. The great news for the coaches out there is that this module is a coach revalidation credit. Whether you do 1, 2, or all 3, you get a maximum of 1 credit for your coach revalidation. So that's a nice thing to have. And I would ask you to keep the audio muted unless invited to switch it on, as it just interrupts the presentation. The video is entirely your choice. So that's up to you. So why are we actually here? I'm sure there are many different reasons out there why you're here, but let's have a look at a few of the ones that we'd like you to consider. So it'll improve your technical ability up to international level, current international level. This is what's happening right now. It's what the IJF, what the EJU want us to be doing. And this is how they want us to interpret these particular actions. A big one for me, the confidence to analyze and discuss complex situations. Many times I referee in Britain, and of course, you will all know that normally at competitions where there's back-to-back mats, we have the situation where the referee is looking directly at the coaches. And you can see a coach is not quite satisfied, but also not actually raising any issues. Maybe these courses can add a little bit more confidence to challenge a few things. Of course, referees should be able to achieve more correct decisions. If we're right at the leading edge of information, the referees should be able to take some of that on board. No one's perfect. The best referees in the world are not 100% perfect. So that's an unrealistic thing for us to expect. But it's not unreasonable for us to expect to get more and more correct decisions as we go along. I believe as well that courses like this improve the relationships between referees, coaches, athletes, parents, whoever else are the supporters and involved. Because if we're all singing the same tune from the same baseline, we have a much better opportunity of agreeing what actually happened. So again, a really good point. And for your coaches and your athletes out there, as well as the referees, but more so the coaches and the athletes, you'll know the ability to win the match often hinges on those very, very small details. And those small details in the rules can really, really help you. You know, there's an old saying, and the saying is, make the rule book your friend, not your enemy. So what we mean by that is if you know the rules, and of course, those people here tonight are wanting to know that, you can take them to your advantage. Don't fight them because the rules don't change. In summary, what we'd like for a British judo perspective is if we all consistently feed athletes accurate information, they're more likely to learn, change actions and improve the judo. So if the coach, the referee, other athletes, parents, whoever, feedback in a consistent manner to the athlete, they're more likely to think, well, actually, it's something I need to change to improve, rather than seeing the officials and the parents and the coaches always having mild disagreement. Then that gives them an extra bit of confusion. So it's much better if we're all singing from the same baseline. So how do we score Nagiwaza throwing techniques? So Ippon, here's the words. The words say that when a contestant with control, which generally means you've got a hold of them, throws the other contestant with real impact on their back, containing considerable force and speed. But that's a bunch of words. What does it really mean? We'll look at that in a bit. When a contestant avoids a back landing should be, by voluntary bridging with their head and 1 or 2 feet, this will always be considered as Ippon. What do we mean by that? A back landing. Well, there we go. So in this particular situation, the blue athlete has been thrown, and the 3 touch points that we've got is the head, the left foot, and the right foot. So if the blue athlete who has been thrown by the white athlete lands in this position, this will be considered Ippon, or even though there is no back contact. However, this would also be considered as Ippon. The touch point would be the head and just 1 foot. So as it says here, with 1 or 2 feet, here's 2, here's 1. These are both automatically Ippon. What's the real world? What normally happens in judo? The bridging that we've just looked at is not the norm. What is the norm? So when uki lands on some part of their back and rolls across their back as indicated below, the action will be deemed Ippon if continuous and control is maintained from the start to the end. What this really means is one athlete throws the other one, maintains the grip and continuously drives from the first action to the end in this sort of scenario. So in this scenario, this is the back of the athlete, the left hip to the right shoulder, or the right shoulder to the left hip. Either way, the first touch point is slightly on the back here, maybe, and rolls here, or slightly on the back here and rolls upwards. Secondly, it's obviously the other way around. Exactly the same as this one, but the opposite hip and the opposite shoulder. So right hip to left shoulder, or left shoulder to right hip. In this case, this would be a situation where maybe the white athlete has been thrown with maybe an ouchigari and lands on the bottom or the belt area, this sort of area, and rolls up to the top of the back. And this would be, again, maintain continuous control, all one action, no interruption, roll from the bottom to the top. And then this one, so either they land on the left shoulder and roll to the right, or land on the right shoulder and roll to the left. Of course, they could just land right across the shoulders. None of this back is touching, but just across the shoulders. Any one of those examples would be ippon. So roll, roll, continuous movement, continuous drive from tori right until the end. What about wazari? Well, this is what the words say. When one contestant with control throws the other contestant, but the technique is partially lacking in one or more of the other three elements necessary for ippon. So in real terms, what does this mean for most of our judo? In this particular case, the white athlete has been thrown on the left side, or just a little bit on the back, or on the right side, a little bit on the back, but not gone across the central point. This would be a wazari score. Secondly, when an athlete who has been thrown blocks a backward landing with either both hands or elbows, or one of each, both limbs must be in contact with the tatami at a single point in time. So with the pictures, in this case, the white athlete has thrown the blue one. Let's say, again, it's ouchigari, because that's a nice backward action. The blue athlete has landed and has both elbows down, stopping the back going down onto the mat. This is a wazari action. Same thing, the white has thrown the blue, but this time the blue athlete has put both hands down onto the mat. This is wazari. And it doesn't matter whether it's both hands, both elbows, or one elbow and one hand. All of these situations are wazari, but it's a continuous action, continuous drive until we get to that position. Third scenario is when uke rolls across the lower part of their back. So if they land on the left hip and roll to the right hip with none of this top part touching the mat, that will also be wazari. The real world part of it for wazari is when uke lands on their side, or when uke lands towards their front with a continuous action to at least their side. This action will be deemed wazari if control is continuously maintained. So what we're saying here is that many years ago, we used to judge judo all on the first impact. Where was the first touch point? That was the score. Judo has developed now, so it's about the continuous control and drive. So if someone lands towards their front, their stomach is towards the mat, but the control is maintained and drive continues. And for argument's sake, uke lands in a 90-degree situation. This would be a wazari situation. So let's have a little look at what this means with some video. So as we saw there, I'll just drag it back. So the white athlete comes in for something like a right-handed uchimata. Blue sidesteps it, takes control with his left arm on his back, and he's presumably pulling the collar with the right arm, driving him down. White actually lands towards the front, but the action never stops. And he just keeps rolling, 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 and he's come down onto his side. And the referee quite correctly scores Wazari. The thing to also consider is that these are plus 100 athletes. So the action is probably going to be a little bit slower. So don't worry about the speed too much on that one. But it's very, very clear Wazari. The second Wazari example we've got. And they're all different scenarios, picking off different elements. So in this case, we've got our good old favorite uchimata again. So this time the white athlete actions the right-handed uchimata. The blue athlete goes over. And as he goes over, the first touch point is his knee, which is fine. And the next touch point is the lower part of the back. As you can see, the back is not fully down. The start number on the back is not flat on the mat. So it's not down, but it's partially down. Okay. So it goes down across the small of the back. Again, Wazari. Third example. So in this case, a white athlete locks in with an ouchi-gari, continues to drive, blue goes down, left hand down, left elbow down, and at this point, he has the left elbow and the right hand down. At this point, the Wazari is scored. Show you again. Down, left hand, transfers to left elbow and right hand. At that point, we have Wazari. The next one. So this one falls into the category we always used to say in the old days it was an overthrow. So he's thrown him a little bit too far, but obviously he's athletic and he's trying to get off it anyway. This time it's the blue athlete with a right-handed uchimata. Blue goes over. He knows he's going over, so he releases with his left hand, tries to twist out and away. As he twists out and away, down. At this point, we have a Wazari. He's all down the side of his body. This is more than enough for Wazari. In fact, it's a very good Wazari. It's all down the side of the body. Really good example, that one. So those are your 4 Wazari examples. We're now going to give you 4 Ippon examples. What I'd like you to do is watch this one quite carefully. It's the first touch point would have probably been, for those of you who are a bit longer in the tooth, it would have been a koka in the old days, but these days we're looking for Ippon. So here, it seems we're limiting ourselves to uchimata and ouchi-gari at the moment, but it's irrelevant really. We're looking for the landings is what we're looking for. So the right-handed ouchi-gari, blue goes down. Bottom is the first action, But look at the drive on the arms, continues to drive, pushes her all the way up to the top, to his shoulders. This is a good quality ippon in today's judo. Just have another look at that one because it is a pretty good one. It's very fast, lots of control, lots of drive. A good quality ippon in today's judo. Next one. So with this one, the blue athlete makes the attack. Something like a Seotoshi coming over. White goes over. And at this point, the ippon is scored. That's enough on the back for the ippon to count. So I'll let you have one more look at it. I can appreciate why the referee may have scored Wazari, because look where the referee is. The referee's here. This is one of the best referees in the world, actually, Veli Mate. He's here, and the Tori is blocking the view of Uki's landing. So it's a little bit difficult for him. But from this side, it's much easier. This is a good quality ippon, lots of control, lots of speed, lots of force, and enough back. So this one is a scenario we looked at in the last explanation. So again, we're looking at sort of a harai there, aren't we? It goes over, and the white athlete's first landing is on his shoulder. He rolls a little bit onto his back, and then at that point, it's a very clear ippon, but he does complete the roll to the other side. So he's thrown, he lands on the left shoulder, rolls over the back to the right shoulder. That is more than enough for ippon. Okay. That's an interesting one. I'll let you see that one again. There's a few things to take on board here. And of course, at full speed, it's not always that easy. So we'll slow it down. So we've come across, and the blue athlete has gone down, thrown white. White's first touch point is a knee, but look at the upper body. The upper body, he's put his head into the mat, and now his right toes are touching the mat. So at that point, the ippon is scored because he's deliberately avoided a back landing. And if you're in any doubt at all, he's still on his head, but now the opposite foot. So this is a case where it's just one foot, but it was first the one, then the other, but all times he was using his head to stop his back touching the mat. So I'll let you have another look at it at full speed. It's not that easy sometimes at full speed. It's in these situations where the care system comes into its own, because it's an unreasonable request to think that the referees would be able to judge that on every single occasion as being Ippon, but it was in this case. Okay. So in the invite with the Zoom link, I did suggest that you may like to bring a pen and a paper. Now's your opportunity to use your pen and paper. Don't worry, I don't want anybody worried that we're going to ask them to explain a particular technique or a particular answer that they've given. We're not going to do that. That's not what this is about. What we'd like you to do is, it's your own personal choice. Write the answers down that you think you should have. In this particular video block, there will be 5 situations. Each situation will be played 3 times. So you get 3 opportunities to make the decision. And you can see at the bottom here, it says Ippon or Wasari. So you know for sure that every situation here will be either Ippon or Wasari. Write down your 5 answers. And then once we've completed the block of 5, we'll then go through the 5 answers with the reasoning why. So off we go. Here's the first one. You're going to get it again now. And a third time from the opposite side. So Ippon or Wasari, write it down, I or W. Watch the touch points on this one. Pay a lot of attention to this one with the back landing. Okay, we're going to move on to the answers now. If that was a little bit quick for you, don't worry. As I said, this whole webinar is being recorded, so you can have the recording and go through it at your own leisure later. That's not a problem. So the first one, it was considered to be Ippon for the white athlete, and the reason was it was a continuous action from the right shoulder to the left hip. So it was one of the classics that we explained a few minutes ago. And number 2 was Ippon to the blue athlete. The same sort of reasoning. Continuous action, but this time from the left hip to the right shoulder. The third one was, again, Ippon blue. It was strong, it was powerful, and sufficient back. This was, I think this was the Seotoshi type one, where it was really, really powerful. And there was just sufficient back there to award the Ippon. Number 4 was Wasari blue. This one, it did end on the back, but it was knee, hand, buttock, back. When you have all these many different touch points before you end up with the final position, especially given the speed of this particular technique, it's too many touch points to consider it on, but it's more than adequate. It's adequate for Waza-Ari because there was control from start to end. And the fifth one was Waza-Ari white, head, knee, not full back, and a little bit slower than we would expect. So again, couple of touch points, head, knee. The very top of the back wasn't down, and it wasn't quite a crisp technique, I would say. So if you have any questions on those, post them in the chat room. I'm sure Martin and Lisa will be able to help you. If there's anything detailed that we need to discuss, we can obviously do that at the end. That's not a problem. So now, so that was Ippon or Waza-Ari. We're now going to go into the next block. We've got 5 of these blocks, so we've got 25 examples. And this time, it's either Waza-Ari or it's no score at all. So you know it's one of those two. It's not going to be Ippon. That's not a possibility on these examples. It's either Waza-Ari or no score. So you should be poised with your pen and your paper. 5 more questions, same scenario, similar sort of speed. Hopefully that's okay with you. Look for the upper body. Be very clear about what happens here. Koichigaki. Okay, that's your second block of 5. Just give you a few seconds to write down your last one. But we're going to go through the same scenario. Okay, so the first one in this particular block, it was considered to be a Waza-Ari, and the reason was that the arm was pulled through and the upper body position was just enough. So the arm was pulled through. The arm being pulled through is quite a significant part. If the arm is pulled through rather than the arm being out towards the back, there is a much higher probability of you getting the Waza-Ari score. This one was Zari White. Again, the arm was pulled through and the upper body position was just enough. Again, the arm pulled through was the major item of control here. Number 3, no score. Hands are not simultaneously in contact with the mat. I do believe both hands went down, but when one hand was down, the other one wasn't. And before the second hand went down, the first one came up. So it doesn't matter to get Wazari at what point the hands or the elbows or one of each go down, as long as in that continuous action there is either an elbow or a hand of each arm touching the mat simultaneously, no matter how short the period of time, milliseconds, it doesn't matter. If it's both hands at any point in time, both elbows or one of each, it's Wazari, but it was deemed that this wasn't the case in this particular one. Number 4 was a Wazari, one elbow and one hand on the mat momentarily. And I put momentarily because it literally was a very, very short period of time. And number 5, no score. Only real impact was on the shoulder. This looks a very, very close one. The arm was tucked in, but it was deemed that it was the point of the more of the point of the shoulder and not enough down the upper arm. You know, there is some debate to be had on some of these things, but the final result on this particular one was a no score. So now we're going to go into block 3. This time, we're not asking you to give the exact score, but just was it a score or wasn't it? And what we're thinking about is that the action may have paused at some point in time. So let's have a little look. It's going to be the same format. All of them are the same format. So you know what to expect. Here we go. So white action, blues on the floor. And just think about what white's action really was there. Now we've got a coach or his teammate looking for Wazari. Did he do enough? Second example. Look at the control on this one. So white's gone down. It's kept the control. It kept driving. Was it enough? Your feeling on that one would be interesting. This is another very interesting one. Pay a lot of attention to the action. So blue down. Again, with this one, like an earlier one, look at the actions that happened. What happened there? And then what was the follow-up? What actually happened as the follow-up? And from where? Final one. There's two or three interesting ones there for different reasons. Just give you a few seconds just to ponder on that last one and make your final decision. And then we'll look at the answers for this particular block. Okay, so score or no score, with an emphasis on was there a pause or not. So the first one was considered to be no score. White throws blue onto elbow, and then the second action where he put the leg across was considered to be newaza. So, of course, he can continue with newaza and he can finish the fight in newaza with some sort of grappling technique, shimi, kensetsu, osakumi. But as the action was considered to be newaza, he can obviously not score from a tachiwaza technique when he's in newaza. Number two, wazari white. This was considered to be a continuous action. The pressure was considered to be maintained and the drive on. There was not considered to be an obvious break in the technique. Therefore, even though it was a little bit slower, the pressure was on, the drive was continued, and the end result was deemed to be wazari. You could never score ippon from a situation like this because the speed factor would not allow that. Number three was a wazari. This was very slow, but in the EJU's opinion, and they have some real experts in their team, ex-world champions and all, and the whole caboodle. This was a very, very slow technique, but just about continuous. The pressure didn't come off. There wasn't an obvious break in the movement. So it was just about enough from a speed perspective to allow the wazari to continue. The fourth one was a no score, an elbow landing, and then the subsequent movement from Tori was considered to be newaza. Again, pretty much like number one in this block. He could finish the fight in newaza. It was perfectly okay for a continuation into a grappling technique, but it couldn't be considered. It was just asking a bit too much for this to be considered as a throwing action because it wasn't tewaza. And the last one, no score. Blue lands on his knees and white only pushes in newaza. So there was an action and the athlete lands on his knees, and to score, although sometimes we'd find it odd to give the exact Japanese terminology to a throwing action, to score, an action must at least resemble a traditional throwing action. You must have some recognizable movement or basic principles in there. Just pushing is not enough. And in this particular case, it was considered that the second action was just pushing and just rolled him over. So,
Keith?
Yeah?
Can we watch a few of the videos back? Because they're quite close ones, weren't they?
Yes, we certainly can do that. Which ones would you like?
Well, probably this section and maybe a few. I don't know what other people are thinking. Maybe now that we've got some of the answers, to review some of the videos.
Yeah, so now you've got the answers. Would you like to do the whole section again? Because that would be useful now you've got the answers.
Yeah, I think so. Quite a few people have asked for that, maybe sort of section 1 and 2 as well, because there were some quite really close scores there.
Well,
thank you.
I'm very happy to do that. In fact, so here we go. We've got all three situations, 3 blocks. So the first one is Ippon or Wazari. You've been through once. You've got the answers. So now have another little look. You're going to see it exactly as you did before. Let's go. So she's a roll across the back. He's gone from the left shoulder of blue right over to the right hip of blue. And this was considered to be enough. It was all continuous drive. Enough for Ippon. This one, we had the Ouchi. He went from one hip to the opposite shoulder. So left hip to right shoulder. Left hip, right shoulder. This one we felt was just a little bit generous, but there's so much force and control that sometimes it's not an exact replica of what the actual rule says in writing. This is the one where there was too many touch points. Knee, hand, bum, back. Too much to consider Ippon. Okay, Lisa?
Yeah, just had a request. Can everybody just check that they're on mute, please? Because apparently it's flicking for a few people.
Okay. So we've got the answers, which you've obviously already seen. We'll just go through to the next video. So this is the second video that we looked at. Wazari or no score. Off we go. This one's a bit difficult to accept at times, but at that first touch point, the arm was through and the shoulder was down, just about. And again, similar. Arm through. Now it's scored, and then she rolls backwards, back in towards white. So it's the real upper body we were looking at. So right hand down, left down, but right was up. So it was not both hands or both elbows at the same time. Kouchigaki. So both hands or arms were deemed to have touched at the same time, even though momentarily, and White was driving the left arm down. This is an interesting one, but it's deemed that White's touch point was just the top of the elbow, top of the shoulder rather, and that wasn't considered to be quite enough to give the score. So you've seen all these answers before, but we'll just go through them again. Arm pulled through on the first two, although you will have seen, as well as everybody else did, that the body was slightly towards the front, but as the arm that was down was pulled through, there was one moment where it was very, very close to the perpendicular, but it wasn't the perpendicular, but it was enough in the authority's mind. Three, can we make sure that everyone's muted, please? I can hear one or two bits of things. The third one was hands are not simultaneously in contact with the mat. The hands must be simultaneously in contact with the mat, even for the tiniest amount of time for the Wazzari to be given. And then number 4, one elbow, one hand, just for that moment. So that was enough. And the last one, the only real impact was considered to be the tip of the shoulder rather than the upper arm to be flat down. So although it was tucked in, it still wasn't considered to be enough of that upper arm. So next one. Score or no score? This is the one where the second action was deemed to be Newaza. Looks a bit like a Tani Atoshi, but this is considered to be a Newaza action because of where he came from. Fine call, that one. This one, the pressure's maintained. So he locks in, he's on their arm, he's still got the pressure on, he's got the left knee on the inner thigh, pushing. He never takes the pressure off. So the drive is still continuous and it's enough to award the Wazzari. It's enough. It's marginal, but it's enough. This one was particularly slow, but it was, again, pressure on. The girl never took the pressure off and just kept driving and ended up with a Wazzari score. So the speed, if that would have been extremely quickly, it would have been a pom. This case, watch it carefully. Down, but it's one elbow. The second elbow is on top of Tori. So the second elbow didn't go down and subsequent actions are just considered to be Newaza. So from here, it's Newaza. Watch this one. Stopped and push. That wasn't considered to be enough of a judo technique. It was just considered to be a start of a new action, which was just a push. therefore a grappling stroke turnover action rather than a throwing technique? So if you didn't get a chance to write the answers down to it previously, first one, white throws blue on elbow, then white ne waza. So it's the one where he went for Tani Atoshi, but it was considered to be a ne waza action. The second one was Zari white, was considered, although slow, to be a continuous action. Number three was Zari blue, again, very slow, but marginally continuous. Number four, no score, elbow landing, and then newaza. So there is, you know, we're splitting hairs here, but this quite often happens in international matches that the things are so tight. It's very, very minor appreciations of what actually occurred. And number five, no score, blue lands on the knees and white only pushes with a secondary action. So the second action that white did was considered to be a separate action from the first one, and therefore only pushing can only be considered as transition into newaza, and not a throwing action in its own right, which means you cannot score for a throw, but can continue into newaza. So that's the three sections that we've done a couple of times now. So I think maybe we should do the last two sections in a similar format. We will go through this section and the next section. We'll give you the answers as we've done before, and then go through them again. So score or no score because of either adequate control or no control. So let's go. So in this case, white attempts a right-handed technique, stands back into tachiwaza and does a left-handed technique. And the referee got this correct. It just happens to be Lisa herself. This was considered to be blue's action from the start to the end. Although blue lands partially on his own back, of course, at no point can anyone score as a result of the other person throwing themselves. It's a good one, this one. Lots of control, a hell of a lot of control on this. Okay, so we've got the same drill as the first three. Zari white for number one. A combination of forward and backward actions not much else to be said about that one. I think when we look at it again, if we consider that particular comment, we can see where the control is coming from. 2, blue's action from the start to the end. So even though it does look as if white puts a little bit of a sweep in, it wasn't considered to be the control in action. It was considered that blue had control from the beginning to the end. 3, Wazari white, a blue attack, and white takes control before Newaza. So with that piece of information, if we have a look at the video again a bit later. So Wazari white, blue attacks, white takes control before Newaza. Number 4, Ippon blue, blue counters with a strong grip and a backwards action. So the Kashiwaza, which it actually went in a different direction. So very clearly took control of the situation. And it was a fair bit of a thud, to be honest. I think he pretty much landed on top of it. And number 5, no score. White failed attack and blue takes control into Newaza. So white put a lot of effort into this and ended up on the tatami. But blue was faster in Newaza. Of course, blue can take advantage and finish the fight if he can in Newaza, but he cannot score for a Tachiwaza action from that particular scenario. Okay, so keep those in mind. We'll do the next video block and then we'll run both blocks again, which is what we did last time. So this time it's score or no score because of the landing. Watch this carefully. So this bot is come up. Just look where white lands. Comes up. It's a good test for you, that one. And also this one. The landing of white is particularly important. Think about what we've said about elbows and arms. And this one also. Very, very clear what happens when you slow it down. Referee didn't have the best view here because Tori was in front of Uki's landing from a referee perspective. So it's difficult for him to see everything he needed to see. And also, again, in this scenario, when somebody does a 180 turn, sometimes you can't see. You can see he was stretching to see. It was not the easiest thing to see. So score or no score because of the landing. Let's have a little look. So the answers. Number 1, Wazari blue, impact on the upper arm and the elbow was marginally sufficient in this particular case. So not a fantastic Wazari, but it was enough. This case, number 2, there was an elbow impact and then the elbow went towards the back rather than being pulled through to the front. and supported Uki, which means it's not quite enough to give that score. Number 3, another elbow landing. The back transition was Newaza, so we couldn't consider the subsequent action after the elbow landing, as that was considered to be in the Newaza phase of the transition. Number 4, another no score. The elbow was, again, away from the body towards the back, and very, very difficult to get the body upright when that happens. So, again, that would be no score. And the final one, the same reason again. You can see this elbow scenario is quite a trend building up, where the elbow's pulled through or it goes towards the back, plays a big part in whether the score is given or not. So we've done the final 2 videos. We'll go back. To video block 4. Hopefully everybody's got some sort of opinion, and we would hopefully be able to clear up 1 or 2 questions now through a rerun. So here we go. So white attacks, stands back up and does a left Kouchigaki. Drives blue back, all down the side. Owazari. Remember what I said? Blue was considered to have done all the control. Any movement that white did there was not considered to have been significant, and it was blue who did the action. This time, white took Taiwaza control on the way down. Watch blue's counter technique. So blue's got the right arm wrapped around the back, pulls him back. He had that collar grip, pulled him back. Watch this one carefully. White puts himself onto the tatami. There. And blue capitalizes in Newaza, but this cannot be a score because white threw himself to the tatami. Never ever score by the other person throwing themselves. You must have control and make a contribution. So again, we'll just go over the answers again quickly. Wazari white, combination of forward and backward actions. No score, blue action from the start to the end. Wazari white, blue attack, white takes control before the Newaza. And it was marginally before, but it was before, and that's the important part. Ippon blue, blue counters with a strong grip and a backwards action. This was quite a bit of a thud. And the last one, no score, white failed attack. So white, it was a good attack. It just failed, but it was a good attack. But goes into the mat, and blues also in Newaza. So their action is a Newaza action which cannot score for a throwing technique. So the last video is score or no score for landing reasons. So what's this? So blue's sweep was enough. Ko Soto. So white's left arm is out towards the back and rolls to the front as well. In this case, the elbow's out, elbow. And then all this action is newaza. All of this is newaza now, cannot be a scoring situation. Okay. Seen all these answers previously, but we had 4 no scores, and just the first one with the Wazadi blue, impact on the upper arm and elbow was just about sufficient. And then as we go down them, elbow impact, then elbow outside. Again, as I said on the first round, elbow, elbow, elbow. It's all about the elbow. Elbow landing, the back transition was newaza. Number 4, elbow away from the body, and so was number 5. Okay, so we've done all the videos that we have. Lisa, Martin, do we have any questions that we need to be answered?